Well, all the chat after FP1 for the Styrian Grand Prix, the first of the Austrian doubleheader, the middle part of the triple header currently in Formula One, was of Valtteri Bottas spinning in the pit lane, leaving his garage area and spinning right in front of the McLaren boys. Nobody was hurt. McLaren very kindly then pushed him back, embarrassingly so for Valtteri. 3-point turned him back into the traffic again. As it happened, it all goes back to the French Grand Prix, where Mercedes, in their analysis after the race, found that they'd lost some time on that outlap with Lewis Hamilton when he lost the lead to Max with a bit of wheel spin coming away from the pit stop. So with Valtteri here in Austria, they were trying a different getaway in second gear in an attempt to try to reduce wheel spin. Well, guess what? It didn't reduce wheel spin. And Valtteri afterwards said, well, you know, we were just trying something different with the warm-up of the tyres. These things happen. Well, sorry, Valtteri, these things don't happen. And my understanding is that if you're going to try something different with the warm-up of the tyres and apply it to some sort of launch, you do that at the end of the session when everybody's on the grid, away from the pit lane. To me, this actually, the parallel is Andrea de Cesaris spinning coming into the pit lane at Silverstone, and I'm guessing it was about 1979 in the Formula 3 race. I think he was driving for Ron Dennis. It was Project 3 MP. Yeah, I think it was Project 3 Racing. So yeah, I mean, that was a really weird thing. And it reminded me a lot of a chat I once had with Niki Lauda. We were hanging out down in Uruguay, would you believe, on a Marlborough trip one year. And Niki was saying that one of the things that's very important to him, and this ties in with Niki, the airline owner, the pilot, and the attention to detail of Niki Lauda, not in a Ron Dennis-like way, but in other ways. And he said you can always tell the style and feel of a driver by the way he leaves the garage and the way he turns into the pit lane and his clutch take-up, obviously in the days when we had manual clutches, and everything that happens at very slow speed. And Niki always made a point of never giving the car any more revs than it needed to get out of the pit lane. And as soon as he saw a driver, they would do a wow, one of these, he would just bail out and think, yeah, forget that guy. And I'm not saying Valtteri was guilty of that, but I mean, it was a bit crass, wasn't it? It was the sort of thing, would Lewis Hamilton have done that? That's what you have to ask yourself. Would Charles Leclerc have done that? Would Max Verstappen have done that? Sergio Perez? Yeah, I doubt it, to be honest. And I think the biggest problem for Valtteri now, and I've not jumped on the bandwagon of saying that he should be swapped mid-year for another driver, but I tell you, the biggest problem right now for Valtteri is the job that George Russell did today in Austria. Unbelievably quick in the Williams with fuel on board. I mean, he was actually third quickest with fuel in the afternoon run, which was the run that mattered because the track was getting quicker. Lap times, Lewis Hamilton quickest on fuel, but he was running the soft tyre, but the soft tyre, a very good tyre, it appears, gets a lot of can get a lot of running out of it. 1 minute 9.3. Max Verstappen 9.4 on the hard tyre, and just able to replicate that 9.4 lap after lap after lap. Looked really, really impressive. George Russell 9.6 on the hard tyre. Unbelievable in the Williams. Very few others ran the hard, but George was really impressive this afternoon. And that will, if there's a moment when you're going to drop it at Mercedes, well, I suppose he kind of dropped it with that outburst in the French Grand Prix when he said, I told you we should have run two-stop strategy, the rain in the morning and all the rest of it. But, there was Lewis Hamilton almost winning the race on a one-stop in the same car. If you're going to drop it again in the pit lane, spinning in the pit lane, you don't want to do it in the same hour that George Russell is doing something unbelievably brilliant again in the Williams, but he did. So, what they do there, I don't know, wait and see. Toto's very loyal to Valtteri because he's basically had a slice of Valtteri's career since the Formula 3 days and has been effectively managing him all this time. So, a difficult thing for him to admit that it hasn't worked out mid-season and swap him, but who knows? I mean, it was a big moment, I thought, for that whole Valtteri Bottas, George Russell dynamic. Anyway, looking at the times, we have to do that in the context of this circuit in Austria, very different from anything we've seen this year because there aren't any real, what I would call real corners in Austria. It's not a circuit where a Lewis Hamilton or a Max or a Charles is necessarily going to find somewhere where he can do something better than his teammate, as he could say turn 11 at Ricard, very good example, or turns 2-3 out of the chicane at Barcelona. Here, it's if you're very quick, you're going to be quick around Austria. It's a question of minimizing errors, recovering from errors with the least possible downside. Obviously late braking, but not braking too late. All the things that most of today's racing drivers are pretty good at. And you could hear that today with the way McLaren were feeding info to Daniel Ricciardo about braking, phase 2 of the braking area, coming out a little bit too quickly, all this sort of detail. It's all about just getting the car stopped. And if you've got engineers who are really switched on, reading the data well in real time, like Daniel, you can really get a lap time out of the car, as he did today in Austria. So it's that sort of circuit. On the upside, Austria is a great circuit for television, first lap shunts, all the rest of it, close racing, passes. So we're in that sort of 2-race zone now of, we'll kind of forget about differences in style because they don't really get rewarded or penalized around Austria. What we're looking at is how they're going to run the race and what's going to happen. Obviously, being at the front in Austria is a major advantage because there's always a bottleneck going into what is effectively turn 2, but it's turn 3. Turn 2 is a flat-out kink. Turn 3, the right-hander at the top of the hill where there's always something going on there, and you want to be away from all that if you're a Max or a Lewis, obviously, with championship points at stake. So let's have a look and see what happened. In the morning, there were 3 runs. As ever, they went out initially. Max was quickest on the medium tyre, just quicker than Pierre Gasly, who was really good out of the box in the Alpha Tauri-Honda again. And Sergio Perez third quickest at 6.8, so he's 0.3 away from Max in that first run. Second run, when they put the softs on, Max was again quickest, 5.9. Pierre Gasly, 6.1, really impressive. And Lewis Hamilton, 6.3. So already there was a pattern that, as we thought, the Red Bull Honda is going to be a great package around Austria. And one of the Mercedes drivers will need to get in the perfect lap if they're going to get on the front row, probably, or certainly if they're going to get the pole. And in terms of the race, in terms of top speed versus efficient downforce, how much downforce they can get away with running for the top speed that they've got, it looks as if the advantage again is with Red Bull Honda in that area. This morning, Daniel Ricciardo was quick through the speed trap. This afternoon, Max Verstappen really quick as well through the speed trap. So that will be a major worry for Mercedes. And I suspect overnight they're thinking, well, how much front wing can we take off the car? How much downforce can we get rid of in order to try and pick up the top speed again? But they'll be thinking, are we going to be in a tow? Are we going to be in DRS? Are we going to be leading? All those factors come into it. That's why DRS actually is quite an interesting part of the permutation these days, because your downforce level effectively is, in a perfect world, going to be governed by whether or not you're following somebody or not. And of course, they won't know that until after qualifying. Anyway, and then we went into the fuel runs. And in the morning, Max did a 9.2 on mediums. Medium, soft and hard all look to be, were all used by runners doing long fuel runs, and they all seem to get through to sort of lap 17, 18 without any drop off in lap time. So from Pirelli's point of view, this looks like a really solid weekend and a compound that is commensurate with the grip level and the ambience around. This afternoon it was a little bit cooler and there were light drops of rain, but nothing to trouble the drivers. So Max was quickest on fuel this morning, 9.2 on mediums. Pierre Gasly did a 9.7. He was second quickest on softs. Lewis 9.9 on mediums, and Charles Leclerc actually 9.8 on softs in the Ferrari, was fourth quickest on fuel this morning. But that was about the best thing that happened to Ferrari all day. After that, they kind of sunk without trace, a little bit like Ricard. They look to be, again, really in trouble in terms of grip balance, getting the tyres to last, keeping consistency in the car. This afternoon, Pierre Gasly didn't run at all. There was an issue that showed up, a technical issue with the power unit, the Honda power unit on the Alpha Tauri. I say it in that tone of voice because, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of very bored with this phrase, a technical problem, something showed up on the data. Tell us what it was. In the old days, we'd know if it was a piston or a conrod or there was an oil leak or a water leak or something. They go on about the technology of Formula One and how wonderful it is. And yet when there's something interesting like a tech problem on one of the engines of one of the leading drivers who potentially could be in the top 3 this weekend, and it's an interesting story to see how they get around that tech problem, They just call it a tech problem. And they're doing that because they think, oh, we don't want anyone else to know our secrets and we don't want anyone else to know how we might solve this problem. Well, you know, the time has come, I think, for Formula One to get a life. And it's not only Honda that do that, it's everybody really. Mercedes probably slightly more open than most. But, you know, technology's there to be embraced, not to be hidden away behind a closed door. Anyway, this afternoon, without Pierre Gasly, the first runs they went out again just to do establishment laps, having improved the setup of the car, in theory, in the brake. Max was again quicker, so that's the fourth session in a row, if you like, in which he's been quicker, 6.1 on the hard tyre. Valtteri Bottas was actually quick in that, 6.2 on the soft. Lewis is on the hard, did a 6.3, which means that he's probably a little bit quicker than Valtteri, as you would expect. And Sergio Perez was fourth quickest on that first run in the afternoon, 6.6 on the hard tyre. Second run, they went to soft tyres again, so it's like a sort of qualifying dress rehearsal. Max Verstappen, 5.4. Daniel Ricciardo, really good in the McLaren, getting his braking really sorted, 5.7. Esteban Ocon, 5.7, and a whole bunch of drivers, 5.7, Esteban Ocon, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso looking really good too in the Alpine, 5.8. So very little to separate the midfield on the soft tyre at the moment, very little. It's going to come down to traffic, and it's going to come down to who doesn't make any track limits errors and who doesn't make any lock-up under braking errors, or who doesn't destabilise the rear type errors. There won't be any sort of understeer coming in on the soft laps, obviously, going into qualifying. Although Fernando all day has been complaining about understeer. A lot of drivers talking about, and Yuki Tsunoda also saying he didn't have much front end. And then finally on the fuel runs this afternoon, as I said, Lewis Hamilton 9.3 on the soft tyre, Max Verstappen 9.4 on the hard tyre, and you'd have to assume the hard is a little bit slower than the soft, but more durable, so that's a really good time, as I say, for Max. But Lewis really doing a good job, putting in a lot of laps on that soft tyre as well. And then George Russell 9.6 on the hard, Sergio Perez 9.6, and Carlos Sainz 9.7. The only driver that I didn't mention in any of that was Lando Norris, who had a sort of up and down day. When he was out doing a clean run, he was very quick. He had about 3 track limits dramas in a row. He was in the pits for quite a long time in the morning, but nothing dramatic. Looks to be really quick. Indeed, on the qualifying predictions put out by officially the Formula One group, based on, they say, chassis and driver performance, I don't know over what. I find it very hard to understand how they achieve that. They've got him P5 tomorrow, Lando Norris, that is, ahead of Sergio Perez. So it'll be interesting to see how correct that was. Esteban Ocon, they've got 4th, but they had him well ahead of Fernando Alonso at the French Grand Prix, you'll remember, in qualifying prediction, and Fernando blew him away. So I don't think we should put too much store in any of this, but just for the record, Formula One are predicting that Lewis Hamilton, oddly, will be on the pole from Max Verstappen, Daniel 3rd, Esteban 4th, Lando 5th, as I say, Sergio Perez 6th, Vettel 7th. The Aston Martins looked pretty good when they were out running, by the way. Valtteri 9th. Valtteri's only 9th. That's another drama for him, isn't it? And Charles Leclerc, the quicker of the 2 Ferrari drivers, which again I would dispute because Carlos Sainz looked pretty good today as well, although Charles was quick right out of the box, looking as if he was trying to make up for everything that had gone wrong in France. So an interesting little intra-team battle there at Ferrari as to who will be the quicker driver. Won't mean that much. As I say, Austria is not the greatest of circuits when it comes to defining speed. And what else have they got there? They've got Yuki Tsunoda down in 14th, which I find very hard to believe. He was quick. He was really quick this morning. So if Yuki Tsunoda does qualify 14th tomorrow, that'll only be because he's gone off or something in Q1, which of course could well happen. I'm fine. Actually, looking at this, they got George Russell 16th quickest. I can't believe that they're doing that. I may well be wrong, but George to me today was the outstanding driver of the day. I thought he looked absolutely fabulous in the Williams. Did a superb job running fuel on that car, and the team are doing a very good job too to keep the momentum going, got the heads down, and all round starting to look sharper and sharper. They're kind of in Alpine space right now and continuing to go quicker. Anyway, it'd be interesting to know what's going on in Toto Wolff's mind right now. He probably won't give too much away. As I say, he's a big Valtteri Bottas fan, so I'm sure he'll give him as much latitude as necessary. But the speed of George Russell, certainly today in Austria, and as we've seen in other races prior to this, cannot be denied.